Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast, The Highschool Network. We are your hosts, Anushka and
Renee.
And so in this podcast, we're going to be kind of explaining what the Highschool Network is, who we are, and the layout of this podcast.
Yeah, we'll be talking about where we will post this podcast as well and what you can expect from this podcast in the future.
So without further ado, let's get into our introductions or a little bit on who we are.
So I am Renee. I am from Germany, where I spent most of my life going to public school. Right now, we're both living in Geneva, and I also spent part of my life living in Saudi Arabia.
All right, so I'm Anushka Kunduri, and I'm from India. I was born in South Korea, which is really crazy considering my cultural background. But yeah, I think for me, a place where I learned most of my developmental understanding probably be New Zealand, for sure.
For me, I think the place that shaped me the most was Saudi Arabia, because I really had a lot of interesting cultural experiences and a lot of conversations with people that I never thought I would have previously in my life. And it really helped me understand other cultures better. Quite frankly, made me gain a lot of insight that I previously did not have.
That's very interesting. I feel like when you have the ability to travel so much, you absorb so many new things, new lifestyles, new perspectives. Yeah, I think similarly for me, Ukraine and New Zealand, I used to live in Ukraine as well. I did, most of my middle school in Ukraine. And yeah, together, New Zealand, Ukraine, it really changes the way you think and really changes your approach to new cultures, I'd say.
Yeah, what would you say specifically impacted you in Ukraine or New Zealand that made you shift your point of view?
I think independence, because that's the time, okay, especially for Ukraine, because middle school, right? I got my own schedule. I got times to wake up on myself and get my homework done on the right time. And all these little things, I think just kind of added to my independence, I'd say.
I agree. Living in a different place can definitely add to your independence. For example, for me, when I lived in Saudi Arabia, I lived with just my father there. And my father was frequently on business trips outside of the country. So I would spend a lot of time alone. And not knowing the language, you quickly realize how to care for yourself, how to be creative in how you do your chores and ensuring that everything gets done.
Did you have a timetable?
No, I did not have a timetable. And I'm actually really proud of my time there because that was before I had Uber Eats and I didn't eat out much. So I was properly cooking.
Home-cooked meals.
Yes. Wow. And I was doing basically the entire household thing by myself when my dad wasn't there.
Oh my God, that's actually such a good skill. Learning how to do laundry and cooking. I feel these things can be undermined just by society a lot. But when you actually get in a situation where you have to learn how to cook, you have to learn how to take care of yourself, do chores, all of these things, they matter so much, especially in college as well. It's a lot of independent work aside from studying and everything.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something people our age should ensure that they learn, especially from their parents. Kind of the basic skills of cooking, kind of keeping a house or an apartment clean, and perhaps doing your laundry. Because quite frankly, when I looked through a lot of my peers, I noticed that most of them have some of the skills, but perhaps not all of them. And I'm quite frankly worried for some of them what will happen when they visit uni. Because I have visited my sister at uni. And my sister is a very neat person. But I've seen some other dorm rooms from people that go to university with her. And it's quite frankly concerning if you don't have the skills and you basically get ripped out of this environment of your parents doing things for you. How much that can impact your life and how messy your room all of a sudden looks and how much of a negative effect it has on cleanliness.
Yeah, and also academics too. I feel for me, okay, I'm going to be honest, I'm not the most neatest person, but I do have a certain cleanliness in my room. If my bed is really trashed, I don't think I'll be able to study properly. I'm going to be honest, I think I need to have things in place to study properly, I feel it's just a better effect on me.
I agree with that. For me personally, I can study without ensuring that everything is neat. But for me personally, I notice that I'm way more productive if everything is in its place.
Yeah.
Everything is neat. And I don't have to worry about a I don't know, like random stuff that is on my desk, for example, that like I need to push around in order to use the desk for its intended purpose. And that's something I, for example, always do before the tests. Everyone always looks at me because all of my pencils are like neatly arranged in rows with equal spacing between each other. Because I basically do not want to expend any energy to like search for pens or...
Equal spacing is crazy.
Yeah. No, but it's true because it genuinely helps me to not detract my attention from the actual test content.
That's actually true. I think I should do that as well. I think the last day before a test, I'm always worrying if like, oh, does my pen have enough like, ink? Do my pencils have enough lead? Do I have my erasers? Yeah, I need to work on that for sure. But it's okay. It's a learning process. We get there. We have our childhoods, just, learn these things. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting how many things you absorb when you're a teenage, I feel like. It's so much more. Everybody always tells me, like my parents, my sister, they're all like, these years are the years. Like you learn so much when you're like 13 to like 17, 18, 19, right? You learn so many different things, so many skills, communication, networking, which we'll get into later. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think our age, even though we have maybe not experienced all ages, it is kind of definitely a prime time for education and kind of setting yourself up for the future because you can really foster a lot of skills. And I feel like people don't realize that much. But if you think about it, if you're 30 and you look back at other people while you are starting a new skill, you look at all of the other people that are way better than you that may have started at like 15, which gave them 15 years of prior practice. And you'll be like, I'll never be as good as them because, they have so much prior experience. But on the flip side, you could have started whatever you're trying to do now at 15.
True. But also to add to that, I think, it's also important to note that everybody has their own journey as well. So, yeah. But no, honestly, if I put that in perspective for me right now, I always think, why didn't I go over my syllabus in the weekend? Why didn't I go over my syllabus like in the holidays? Procrastination is an issue. But yeah, if you look at it in the long term, definitely using your teens, I think I've learned is using my teens to socialize, to learn, to try out new skills, I think is really important for me so far as a developing person,
Yeah, I agree because right now is still the time where you kind of have a lot of time while still having a lot of energy to do a lot of different things and to kind of try out what you like and really test, what hobbies you're into and what you want to do in the future, for example. So, I mean, the next time that can really happen is quite frankly when you're on a pension, probably, because you will never have this much time again, except perhaps in university. But, if you're a pensioner, then you'll no longer have the energy and you'll no longer have, a long future to look forward to where you can experience all of those things. So I think right now is really the time to kind of identify what you want in the future, not just career wise, but also really in terms of hobbies and other activities and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. Like having an open mind is a huge thing. Having open mind, learning how to kind of approach things, being able to learn that, for me, I'm actually really proud of it. That also comes from experience of traveling around, I'd say. To add on to what you said, what's crazy though? In Europe, in Switzerland specifically, I always see people who are like much older than me, like well into their 70s and 80s going on hikes. I'm sorry, how do these people have this much energy? I feel like going like similar to like the pension idea, they've done their jobs. Now they just have like this rest of their life to spend with their loved one, to spend with their grandkids or whatever it is. But for me, it is such a big culture shock seeing these people like have that same energy. Like these Swiss people, I mean, it's insane how energetic they are still at this age. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I feel like Swiss pensioners they really do a lot of different activities. And if you go outside, you really see them around in the nature. And another thing that seems to be quite prevalent in Swiss culture is that pensioners, instead of just staying in kind of one location, if they can afford it, actually travel around quite a lot within the country to kind of see different natural sites and kind of pursue different activities, which is definitely a really nice way, I feel like, to spend your retirement.
Yeah, I think it's so nice that they have the time and they have the will to keep doing that. I recently went to France, to Nice, in my vacations. And what is so nice, because obviously it was like the vacation time, I saw so many like cute couples who are like in their 70s, their 80s. Like it was so sweet, like seeing that culture, seeing that, the vibrance, you know? They're like kind of using that lovely area and they're kind of benefiting from that warmth. And it's really sweet seeing that actually. So I think, again, like another thing with the culture shocks, but it's like a nice culture shock seeing that. You know, it makes you feel nice.
Can I ask, what other culture shocks did you really experience when you came to Switzerland?
So many. The list goes on and on. But one thing is I've noticed everybody's always on time. Like trains, trams, buses are always on time. And if you get, like, if you're only like a second, maybe, okay, like a minute late, it's gone. The train is gone. It's not waiting for you. It doesn't matter if the coach, if the guy sees you, he's leaving. There's like a schedule, a fixed time. And I think for me, I remember I was late so many times from school. And I called my dad saying, can you please drop me to school? I missed my train. But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, me personally, as a German, I feel like we also have that in our culture to kind of be on time. And I mean, I talked to some of my Swiss friends here and they said downright, if you have an appointment and somebody else is 15 minutes late, it basically means that the appointment is cancelled, because if somebody is more than 15 minutes late, it is generally expected that they will not arrive at all. And for me in Germany, there is a similar culture in especially the workplace or in school where you're really expected to be on time. But I feel like it is slightly less extreme because, for example, the trains in Germany, they never come on time.
Do they not?
No, that's like a thing in Germany that, like, if you're taking a long distance train, you're basically assuming that it's going to be late.
Then, like, what's the best means of travel in Germany then? That's like efficient and on time.
Probably the car, to be quite frank. But an interesting thing about German culture is also, even though you know that the train is going to be late, you'll be on the train station probably early because you know you're German.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I can relate to that. I mean, look, I'm getting better, you know, because I mean, I have to go to school. I have to take the train. So I think it's actually a good practice, you know, but not to saying that many Asian people are late. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying that for me, because I'm not really used to this like scheduled lifestyle. Also, another big culture shock, Sundays are closed. Sundays are actually fully closed. Nothing is open. No malls, no shops, no groceries. Nothing is open on Sunday. Why? Just...
Yeah, Switzerland takes that really seriously because most like culturally Christian countries have certain restrictions on Sundays because it is generally considered a rest day. But like in Switzerland, it is really extreme. Yeah. And since you mentioned time schedules, I also want to say something, which is that as a German, I'm really used to like proper, you know, time scheduling that is really strict and doesn't allow for much wiggle room. But when I went to Saudi, I really saw how things there are done differently, because historically in Saudi, what was done is that they had multiple calls to prayer within a day, and meetings were basically scheduled between the calls of prayer, which of course makes sense because everyone was at the call of prayer. So everyone knew when the call of prayer was. And that way you have kind of two solid markers in between you can base each appointment. So it makes a lot of sense. But for me as a German, it was a huge culture shock because I'm used to very, very specific appointments. And due to this historical tradition in Saudi, a lot of people take times for meetings as kind of a very rough meeting time. And they'll either be there like a little bit early or a little bit late. And this is generally considered that like times provided are more of a rough estimate where you can be like an hour there before or an hour there later, instead of like the German one where it's really just
On
being
time.
on time.
Yeah. Actually, something relating to that is in India, party culture is big. Family gatherings or work parties, all these things. And it is expected that if you say, okay, the party's starting at 6:30, you better believe nobody's getting there before 7. Nobody's getting there before 7. So yeah, it's really funny, these things, you know. It's interesting, you know, how you get used to all these different cultures. And I feel like when I go back to India after, you know, maybe next year, whenever I'll go, I'll also face that culture shock of going back. You know, have you ever experienced that?
I mean, from going back, the culture shock, I do feel like I had somewhat of a culture shock negatively when I went back to Germany from Saudi, because in Saudi Arabia, I lived in Jeddah, which is a really big city of around 4 million people. But despite the fact that the city was so big, there is basically zero crime. Like, not there, it's quite safe, not like there's little crime. Like, genuinely, I do not think I could have seen like dangerous, violent crime if I had looked for it, like in the entire city. And going back to Germany, I come from the city of Frankfurt, which is kind of renowned for its banking in Germany, but also for organized crime. It was really a negative culture shock coming back to my own country and seeing how much more crime and criminal disorder there is.
Did you like see a lot of cars patrolling in Saudi?
I mean, in Saudi, there was cars patrolling, but quite frankly, like in Saudi, it's really different because there's a lot of police presence, for example, on all of the shores to discourage illegal migration. Although that is in fact not the police, that is usually the military. But in the actual cities, I did not see that much police presence.
That's fair. You know, because here I always hear like some sirens or something happening, a lot of fire trucks. Maybe that's incidental. Maybe that just happens because there's a fire somewhere. But I also see that, okay, so here there's like a tram system, like an intercity tram system. And sometimes you'd see like police cars just going through the tram route and they'd end up in completely different parts of the city just by following that tram like route. It's really insane how that works.
I definitely agree with you that like the police presence here, you have a lot of like noise from sirens and stuff, but I feel like that's also because you live very much in the city center.
True.
Me living in the suburbs, I get much less of that. But still, I mean, Geneva is a really safe place. You know, Switzerland is renowned for being one of the safest countries in Europe, if not the world, after all. But still, you do get like certain negative things, although it is very limited in terms of drugs and in terms of crime, that I do not feel like I got in Saudi. Also, in Saudi, it was quite a culture shock in regards to border control, because Saudi takes their border controls insanely seriously. And me coming from Germany, a Schengen country, which basically has borders as like drawn lines on the floor, that was very different. For example, when I was in Saudi Arabia, since it was on the beach and we were not used to living on the beach, we went out to like the water a lot of times, like in rural areas, in order to have barbecues, kind of in the sand on the beach, you know, at night. And every single time, after some time, like the military came and broke our barbecues up. Like it was like a common occurrence that the military would just come by the beach, like in 15-minute intervals. And also once I went, for example, on a scuba trip that didn't leave the country. It was literally a boat going out to a reef, staying in Saudi territorial waters and coming back. And one of the guys from our group did not have a passport. He had like his visa identity card for Saudi Arabia, and they did not let him get on that boat because they're so worried about illegal migration. And for me, that was really interesting to see.
You know what? I feel like that's more normal to me. You know what's crazy though? For me, another culture shock, so many culture shocks. Switzerland, France, Germany, Italy, they're all like, you can just drive there and that's it. Like, that's literally it. And the first time, because I live near like the French border to Switzerland, and you can just drive and you won't even see any police. You won't see any big banners saying, welcome to France. That's it. Like, it's just Switzerland, France. And I remember talking to my dad being like, so like, Papa, where are we going? Like, where's the big, the big grocery store? He's like, oh, it's here. It's in France. And I was like, we're going to France? We're in Switzerland. Like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, we're in France. We're in France right now. Literally like a 10-minute drive. I feel like that to me is just crazy. Nobody checked our passport, our visa, anything, like who we are, what our names. That was the biggest thing ever, in my opinion, for me.
Yeah, Europe is so connected, and it's so interesting because coming from Germany, Switzerland is considered, as a European country, one of the countries with strict border controls. But being in Switzerland, I remember when my parents wanted to basically formally import a car, they had concerns because they did not know when to go to customs and actually find staff at the customs in order to declare the car. Or also, I went to a place in Vaud, which was on the border to France, and it was kind of a skiing area. And one of the ski slopes literally went across the border, and there was like a small fence kind of showing where the border is, but with a hole in the fence to ensure that you could ski from one country to the other.
What? Okay. Yeah, no, that's something I'm not used to at all. And I don't think I will be ever. I think it'll take me more time. Because honestly, coming from a country like India is huge, okay? It will take you 5 hours to get from one side of the state to like intercity of the state. 5 hours. The traffic, the roads, just how big the state is. Like, not even country, state in a country, and then a country. And like, it's huge. You will not get anywhere in that amount of time. Imagine, okay, to put it into perspective, for me, it's like saying you can get to Delhi and you can go to Punjab in 5 minutes. It's impossible. For the Indian listeners listening to this, it's like the most ridiculous thing ever. Living in Switzerland and just in 5 minutes you're in France. I feel like it just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I remember when we were new to the school, one of the students, one grade above, at one point just simply decided, because they promised to a friend, that during lunch break they would go to France. And they just went on their bike and they left for like a small village in France. And they came back and it was like, well, how was your time in France? And he was literally gone for like maybe 40 minutes.
Oh yeah, also, guys, there's like this electric scooty. It's electric form of vehicle, like a scooter. And you see so many of these vehicles in Switzerland, and it's actually surprisingly so safe, to be honest. You can just go anywhere with that one electric scooty, and you can be back in just no amount of time. It's insane, the acceptance of different kinds of vehicles. And also, another culture shock for me is cycles on roads. Like, there's a cycle lane in the road. And the road also, like, accommodates for a tram. It also accommodates for cars and trucks and other, like, vehicles. It's actually insane for me.
Yeah, that's something Switzerland does really well. There's a lot of, like, bike paths. Although I have noticed that, like, in the really, really rural areas, there's sometimes no sidewalks for some reason. But honestly, like, bike paths are really good in, like, most areas I've come across.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd say Switzerland is one of the most organized countries I've ever been to in terms of, like, sidewalks and the driving lanes and everything, road signs. Everything is really clear and it's just really nicely done. And it's really efficient to live here. It's expensive, but it's really lovely, I'd say. And also, we live in Geneva, so the one prominent thing in Geneva is Lake Genève. Right? It's like the huge, beautiful lake you see from any point. And the views are absolutely beautiful. I mean, sunset, sunrise, and all the walks you can do. It's really nice to live here, honestly. So yeah, that was our conversation about our culture shocks and how we felt moving to Switzerland. So from this, let's get into a bit of explanation about why we chose the High School Network as our title of the podcast, and just go into a bit of detail into what our podcast actually means and who we're going to have on our podcast.
Yeah, we want to explain kind of why we're doing this and what our plans are for the future.
I'll start. Because since there is a lot of information to go through, we'll just say some of them. We'll expand more with more episodes. So the major thing that we want to focus on is connecting with other people. Networking. What is networking? It's the process of making connections, to expand your social network, to expand your compatibilities with people. And so we decided just to see how far we're able to reach and just to see how many people we can talk to and really expand our horizons and our perspectives. We're going to have teachers and students on our podcast.
We'll try to interview as many people as possible together, but with some people, especially if we're interviewing a single person, it just makes sense to have a single host to ensure that there is a more balanced conversation. So some conversations will feature only one of us for that reason.
So that would be pretty much all the logistics on the podcast. And of course, we'll inform you about more things in the next couple episodes that we do. Yeah, that is pretty much it. So me and Renee will see you in the next episode.
Yeah, see you guys.
Bye.